This is a do-or-die battle between two people who were once close classmates. They understand each other's moves down to the last strike, but before they can determine a winner, the police suddenly storm in. The animosity between the three of them had actually been simmering for a long time. Why did the two brothers turn against each other, and why are the police so determined to hunt down Zybel? It all began with a trial many years ago. That day, a man with long hair stood in the middle of the courtroom. The judge announced that Zybel was accused of being involved in 7 murders. The first 6 cases were not tried due to lack of evidence. Only the 7th case has clear, irrefutable evidence. In the end, Zybel was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Upon hearing this, the victim's family was utterly outraged. Detective Many Teeth, who personally investigated the case, was furious. He lunged forward and landed a flurry of punches to Zybel's face. He was determined to make him pay for the blood debt. The victim's family was also enraged and rushed forward in a chaotic frenzy. A little girl stood silently at the back of the courtroom, etching the enemy's face deep into her heart like ice. Only Zybel truly understood in her heart what had happened. It was his once close friend who had betrayed him 15 years ago. Zybel and that man grew up together in an orphanage for the blind. They were soulmates since childhood. The two of them were a pair of troublemakers from the moment they were born. Ever since they were little, they've enjoyed tormenting stray cats and dogs for fun. As they grew up, they became even worse. Those two treat murder like a competition. They're experts at picking on strangers. The lead investigator on the case is team leader Name, who is also Hizu's biological father, and he has become their next target. That evening, Mr. Name took a taxi home. Just as he arrived at the gate, a stranger got into the taxi to continue the ride. After driving a short distance, Mr. Name suddenly felt a chill on his neck and blood gushed out like a stream. He struggled to take one last breath just to see his daughter, Hizu. Finally, he collapsed right beside the little girl, his eyes still wide open. Fortunately, Hizu seemed to sense something. She turned over just in time to catch one last glimpse of her father. The next day was Mr. Name's birthday, and that's when Jessica brought a cake to celebrate. But as soon as he opened the door, he witnessed a scene that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Mr. Name had already passed away. At that moment, he was lying in his daughter's arms. Hizu was still wearing birthday hats for both father and daughter. The little girl had been hoping her father would wake up so they could eat the cake together. In reality, Hizu knew exactly what was happening, but all she could do was helplessly stroke her father's face. They thought the culprit would get away with it, but unexpectedly, someone came forward to accuse him. A total of 7 lives were lost. However, in the end, there was only one case with clear evidence. 15 years passed in the blink of an eye. On the day Zubul was released from prison, the only person there to greet him was Dazang. As soon as they met, Dazang threw a piece of tofu right in his face. His only goal was to send Zubul back to prison once and for all. But Zubul remains defiant, refusing to plead guilty and denying all murder charges. Dazang immediately had people take turns watching him, keeping a 24/7 watch without taking their eyes off him. By this time, Hizu had grown into a young woman. After her father's death, she did not go to an orphanage but was raised by all the members of the police department. She became the team's favorite, and sometimes she even stayed overnight at the police station. Today, Hizu prepared a basket full of pink butterflies, polished her father's medal, and set off for the station. On the way, she ran into a neighbor and gave her a bow. She even helped everyone push their strollers. Every day when she arrives at the office, the first thing she does is go up to the rooftop to sit for a while. From here, she can see her biological mother, the woman who abandoned her years ago. But Hizu has no intention of reconciling with her mother. She just stands from afar, quietly watching. When she turned around, she saw the man living with her mother approaching. Hizu immediately stepped forward to warn him that he must treat women with respect, otherwise, sooner or later, he would pay with his life. But the man just sneered and paid no attention. Hizu didn't argue any further and returned to the police station. She pinned a bow on the back of the police officer standing guard at the gate, telling him that today was World Breast Cancer Awareness Day. Once inside, she handed out pink ribbons to everyone. Then she rolled up her sleeves and started mopping the floor. At that moment, Mr. Dustin was training the new recruits. He handed one of them a bow tie and told him to put it on. The new recruit protested vehemently, saying he didn't want to stain his newly purchased jacket pink. As for Da and Jiang, they are now team leaders. While counting a stack of bills, Da noticed one was missing. Lion told Mr. Dustin to check who hadn't turned theirs in yet. It was then that Mr. Dustin suddenly remembered the new recruit standing in front of him, so he told him to go report to the team leader. But Dustin didn't want to deal with the hassle. He just held out his hand and said, "Here's 10,000. The new recruit was completely taken aback. How could he be expected to pay money just to get a job? Could the squad leader be bullying the new recruit? Just then, Dustin's father arrived, discussed Ibelm's release from prison. He was told to stay calm and handle the situation rationally, but Dustin wasn't interested in listening to that nonsense. Just then, Haiju walked in. It turned out she had come to visit. Everyone on the team had always provided her with living expenses in the form of a salary. Her senior even specially prepared an extra red envelope for her. After handing out the money, Dustin quickly invited Haiju to go out for a meal. Dustin, thank you, my kind boss. After that, Mr. Dustin and the new recruit went outside to keep an eye on Daibelm. On the way, they discussed how he had been captured all those years ago. It turned out that after killing the male group leader, Daibelm had also tortured his girlfriend to death. He was later arrested after being reported surrounded by someone else, and that person was none other than Seo Chun. The two of them were as close as brothers. They even shared the same woman they both loved. Seo Chun had his eye on Dai Baum's girlfriend. After being discovered by Dai Baum, he immediately killed the witness to silence them. At first, Dai Baum intended to settle the score with Seo Chun, but unexpectedly, Seo Chun struck first. He took all the evidence of Dai Baum's crimes to the police, causing him to be sent straight to prison. Now Dai Baum is back to having fun. After their tryst, the woman stormed off, grumbling non-stop that Dai Baum didn't know how to treat a lady with respect. If he'd gone any further, he would have killed her. Back in the car, she continued to vent to the man accompanying her. The man paid no attention and just got out of the car to use the restroom. Just then, Seo Chun appeared beside him and deliberately peed right on his shoes to provoke him. The man cursed angrily, never suspecting that standing right in front of him was a psychopathic killer. After killing the man, Seo Chun still didn't stop. He got into the victim's car. The girl was still sitting in the passenger seat, looking in the mirror to touch up her eyebrows, thinking her boyfriend had come back. Unexpectedly, a stick came flying at her from behind, and Haiju witnessed the entire murder from behind a roadside tree. She clutched her shirt tightly, held her breath, dared not move, and quietly backed away inch by inch. It turned out that all these years, Haiju had never forgotten the murder of her father. She had always been waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. The next morning, the police received a report of a crime. Inside the black car were two bodies lying face down. The bizarre and infuriating manner of their deaths prompted Dustin to immediately arrive at the scene. Recognizing the familiar modus operandi of Xiaomei, he was certain that the bastard Zhou Belm was responsible, but his subordinates reported that they had been monitoring Zi Belm all night and he hadn't left the area at all. Dustin looked skeptical and immediately ordered Zi Belm be brought in for question. The scene shifts to the interrogation room. Zi Belm sits with his legs crossed, appearing completely at ease, a cold smile playing at the corners of his mouth. His arrogance was so palpable it made others seethe with anger. Dustin clenched his fists tightly, but no matter how much he questioned him, he couldn't get anything out of him. Finally, he had no choice but to release him according to procedure. As soon as Zi Belm stepped out of the station, he bumped right into Hizu. A ferocious glint immediately flashed in his eyes, like a starving wolf spotting its prey, but he quickly restrained himself. This was a police station, and he couldn't afford to show any weakness. He had no idea that Hizu was the witness from last night. She looked him straight in the eye, narrowing her eyelids slightly. Her gaze clearly revealed cruelty and coldness, not at all what one would expect from a young girl. The plan for revenge that Hizu had been secretly preparing for all these years finally began in this very moment. Hizu silently tracked his every move, but the night before, she discovered that there was actually more than one psychopathic killer. Hizu realized it was Seo Chun, who had once been Zi Belm's sworn brother. This discovery left her speechless for a moment. A new idea immediately popped into her head, and she decided to pin everything on Zi Belm. Meanwhile, the police still hadn't made any significant progress in their investigation. Hizu immediately turned her attention to the man who had abused her mother. Having witnessed her mother's injuries for many years, her heart had become filled with deep hatred. In the middle of the night, she tracked down that man and beat him to death with a weapon. Taking advantage of the darkness, she dragged him deep into the park where Zi Belm went jogging every morning. The body was arranged exactly the way Zi Belm used to set up his crime scene. The next morning, Zed Belm was jogging through the park as usual when he suddenly discovered the murder victim in the thicket. His footsteps immediately came to a halt. This posture, this method of committing the crime, it was clearly an imitation of him. Someone is deliberately framing him. As he furrowed his brow in thought, the corner of his eye suddenly caught sight of a small, slender figure in the distance. He immediately gave chase, and the two of them chased each other through the woods. Long-legged Zi Belm ran fast, but for some reason he still couldn't catch up to the short-legged figure ahead of him. That figure slipped into the crowd. Zi Belm rushed after him but lost sight of him. He stood there, breathing heavily, while Hizu was just testing his speed. She needed to know exactly how her speed compared to Zi Belm's so she could plan her next move. In the quiet of the late night, Zi Belm had just returned to his quarters when he heard the clatter of a lock. The sound was so faint it was almost inaudible. He quickly turned off his phone screen and pulled out the knife hidden under his pillow. Holding his breath so as not to make a single sound, the door was pushed open just a tiny crack. Seo Chun crept in like a cat. After so many years apart, neither of them said a word. They relied only on the sound of footsteps and breathing to gauge each other's presence. The entire room was filled with the smell of gunpowder, tense as a stretched string. Seo Chun advanced step by step with a knife in hand, trying to pinpoint Zi Belm's exact location. Finally, his gaze settled on the bathroom door. When he turned on the light, he saw Zi Belm standing inside, knife in hand, ready to strike. Seo Chun tried to gently nudge the knife handle, but he remained motionless, making no sound. The two of them continued to watch each other's every move, but in the end, Seo Chun was outmaneuvered by Zi Belm. He knew that if he fought head-on, he certainly wouldn't stand a chance. Just as he was about to change tactics, a noise suddenly came from outside. Another uninvited guest had arrived. The person who appeared this time was Dustin. He had just made his way to Zi Belm's door when he saw Zi Belm coming out of the bathroom. His eyes had the look of someone who had just committed murder. Dustin let out a few sarcastic, taunting remarks. marks. But Zebelm's gaze suddenly darted behind him. Destian immediately realized someone was standing behind him. Out of curiosity, I turned my head to take a look. The next morning, Haiju was sitting on the rooftop across the street as usual, looking toward the window of her mother's house. Usually by this time, her mother would have opened the window to let in some fresh air long ago. But today, there was absolutely no sign of movement. A sense of unease welled up inside Haiju. She immediately tiptoed over to her mother's door. The door wasn't locked, it swung open with just a light push. In the living room, her mother was slumped beside the sofa. Her face was pale, as if all life had drained from it. Next to her, an empty medicine bottle lay on the floor. Ju said nothing. She just quietly sat down next to her mother, who had long since stopped breathing. Perhaps after her husband's death, her mother could no longer hold on. Her loved ones left her one by one. Haiju stood in the corner of the room, completely at a loss. All that hatred felt like a rope tightening around her heart, making it impossible for her to breathe. It was all Zebelm's fault. Killing him became the only obsession she could cling to. The string of murders made Alex so furious she was about to explode. When she found Zebelm again, he was sitting leisurely in a noodle shop. Jung slowly picked up each strand of noodles from the bowl. Alex grabbed the jar of chili powder on the table and poured the entire contents into the bowl of noodles, being a bit too generous. A thick layer of red chili powder completely covered the surface of the noodles, but Zebelm didn't even bat an eye. He stirred the bowl of noodles gently with his chopsticks, then opened his mouth and ate as if nothing had happened. Even though the spiciness made the corners of his mouth turn red, he didn't furrow his brow even once. Then he said coldly, "That year, if team leader name hadn't covered your shift, the one lying in a pool of blood that night would have been you, Alec." A remark that directly touched on the team leader's haunting past. Seo Chun's sudden appearance forced Hye-ju to reevaluate all the information. She ransacked the archives at the station to review the old Zobelm case, and discovered something suspicious in it. Some of the wounds were straight puncture wounds, while others were long, clean cut. Although the method of attack was the same, the technique was completely different. Hye-ju realized that there were actually two perpetrators that year. Thanks to her unrestricted access to the police station, she was able to easily obtain all the files on Seo Chun. It turned out that he was the one who had accused Zebelm in court all those years ago. The hatred between the two had grown so deep that they could no longer coexist. As for the three recent copycat murders, Zebelm insists they were a deliberate setup by Seo Chun. Hye-ju stared intently at Seo Chun's photo in the file, a cold smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She went to a pet store to buy a thick chain for a mastiff, then hired someone to deliver a truckload of empty beer bottles to Seo Chun's house. At midnight, Seo Chun came home from work. When he opened the door and stepped inside, the house was pitch black. He felt his way into the kitchen, intending to find a candle. As soon as he set foot on the floor, he felt a searing pain. Looking down, he saw the floor was covered with shards of broken glass. The soles of his feet were lacerated by the glass shards and bleeding profusely. Just then, the table lamp came on, and he was already sitting on the sofa. He threw a power cord at him, and an electric shock immediately coursed through Seo Chun's body. He convulsed violently and fell into the pile of broken glass, his body pierced all over. Stepped closer, staring intently at the calluses on his hand. Those were the marks of someone who frequently held a knife, cut things. There was no mistake. He was the very same monster who used to slash people all those years ago. Just as Ji-beom lay down, he felt something was off beside him. He pulled back the blanket and was horrified to discover a corpse. He removed the plastic wrap, and the distorted face was no longer recognizable as Seo Chun. Before he could even recover, Hye-ju suddenly lunged out from behind the closet. She plunged the knife straight into the middle of his third rib and pressed down hard to hold him in place. Ju's voice was as cold as ice, and another chain wrapped around Ji-beom's neck. She yanked it hard backward. She didn't intend to kill him. She just wanted to choke him until he passed out. That way, she could stage a fake crime scene. The two murderers were tearing at each other, making it easy to pin Seo Chun's death on Ji-beom. She had already called the police and was just waiting for Ji-beom to be arrested again, but Hye-ju never expected Ji-beom to be so resilient. By the time the paramedic, forensic team, and police arrived, Ji-beom had vanished, leaving only Seo Chun's body behind. The forensic team touched the bloodstain and found it was still warm, indicating that Ji-beom couldn't have run very far. He immediately ordered the entire building to be cordoned off and searched thoroughly, leaving no stone unturned. The police immediately spread out, their footsteps echoing through the hallways. The search unexpectedly uncovered additional clues. A rookie officer discovered a man and a woman lying motionless in the bathtub of the adjacent room, covered in blood. The police quickly carried them to the hospital. Medical staff leaned over to call out to the woman. She suddenly opened her eyes wide and woke up, her gaze fixed on the back of the room. It turned out that the man who was rescued at the same time was Ji-beom. His eyes were as sharp and cold as poison-tipped needles. He even signaled for her not to say a word. Immediately afterward, he suddenly struck the rescue worker. He grabbed a pair of scissors from the table and cut the stretcher straps, muttering to himself, "Only the dead can keep a secret forever." Then, with a sudden, fierce motion, he plunged the scissors straight into the woman's heart, but he spared the rescue worker, because the person hadn't had time to get a clear look at his face. Byum managed to escape from the hotel, another opportunity to commit another crime. The next morning, Hae-shu reads the headline on the front page of the newspaper. Her fingertips turned white as she clenched them tightly. The police announced that Jae-byum was not the killer of Seo-chun. He has a clear alibi and was under surveillance the entire time. But for now, we must still consider Jae-byum the prime suspect. Hae-ju grits her teeth, thinking she might have to send Jae-byum to prison until he dies to satisfy her anger. Meanwhile, after escaping, Jae-byum has become unusually calm. Now, all he needs to do is find the person who secretly harmed him. At the internet cafe, he kept moving the mouse back and forth across the screen. In the recent news reports about the victims who had been falsely accused of being his accomplices, a surprising headline immediately caught his eye. One of the victims was the woman's husband, who was the wife of the male group leader he had killed 15 years earlier. And that woman had died just a few days ago, and they left behind a daughter. Based on her age and build, the girl who had just been crying and who had hit him earlier was Hae-ju. The someone sitting next to him was stealing glances at him. The owner walked over and quietly reminded me, "Please keep your voice down a little." His gaze swept across Jae-byum's face and suddenly remembered the wanted poster at the police station. A cold sweat broke out on the back of his neck. He pretended to clear the table, quietly retreated to the bar counter and pulled out his phone to call the police. But by the time Dustin led her people in, only one cigarette was left in the internet cafe. The computer screen was still lit, displaying the complete profile of the male team leader's daughter. Dustin tried touching the tip of the cigarette and found it was still hot, so he was definitely still nearby. He immediately ordered everyone to stand against the wall. Meanwhile, Jae-byum was hiding, taking advantage of the moment when Dustin was checking each person. Jae-byum suddenly rushed out. He slashed Dustin's palm with his knife, then spun around, kicked open the emergency exit, and ran off. At the entrance to the alley, a police trainee was blocking the way with a gun, but his hands were shaking so badly he didn't dare shoot. Seeing this, Jae-byum just smirked coldly and took a few steps forward. The knife in his hand plunged straight into the young police officer's stomach. Then he pulled the seatbelt to restrain him, shifted into gear, and sped off. On the way, he also took the recruit's uniform and pulled some newspapers from the back seat to press against the wound to stop the bleeding. In South Korea, killing a police officer is considered a more serious crime than killing a civilian, so Jae-byum knew he had to save his life. He also stole Dustin's police car, then brazenly drove straight to the police station. The guard at the gate recognized the license plate and let the car in without any suspicion. It turns out that the most dangerous place is actually the safest one, but he didn't come here just to return the car. His real goal was to find Hae-ju's home address. In the department's records room, Hae-ju is reorganizing old case file. Looking up, she saw Jae-byum quietly slip inside. Her fingers paused on the stack of documents. She didn't make a sound, because it wasn't enough to catch him just yet. She needed to carry out the final part of her plan so he'll never be able to raise his head again. The new recruits at the station are still inexperienced, and they're easily swayed by a few sweet words. Jae-byum didn't have to work very hard to get Hae-ju's address. He hid a knife on his person and rushed straight to her house. Just as he reached the staircase door, the motion sensor light suddenly went out with a click. In the darkness, a figure crept silently along the wall, advancing cautiously. At that very moment, Hae-ju suddenly understood what it felt like when her father was stabbed all those years ago. Now she was certain that Jae-byum was the one who had killed her father. She bit down hard on one of them. As he leans back, she turned and ran away, but Hae-ju seemed oblivious and kept running at full speed. Jae-byum rubbed his chin, a hint of surprise in his eyes. This girl got hit once, so how come she's still running so fast? He immediately gave chase, but realized Hae-ju wasn't running toward the densely populated residential area, but instead turned onto a trail leading up the mountain behind her. The mountain road was rugged and full of potholes. Pebbles and stones rolled underfoot, making a rustling sound. Hae-ju's silhouette appeared and disappeared among the trees, like a small animal cornered with nowhere to run. Finally, Jae-byum catches up to her on a wooden bridge. He grabbed her by the collar from behind and let out a malicious, sarcastic remark. "If you commit a crime, you have to pay the price. Got it? All we have to do is put Hae-ju in jail, and then no one will stand in his way anymore." But Hae-ju suddenly turned around. At some point, a sharp knife had appeared in her hand. She stabbed Jae-byum straight in the thigh with a fatal blow. In excruciating pain, Jae-byum reflexively let go. Hae-ju immediately took advantage of the opportunity to continue racing toward the mountaintop. As she ran, she pulled out her phone to call Alex. At that moment, Alex was on her way to Hae-ju's house with her teammates. As soon as he answered the call, he immediately turned the car around. But in just those few brief sentences, Jae-byum had already caught up to Hae-ju. He grabbed her by the throat and forced her underwater. His gaze was no longer as vicious as before, but revealed a twisted, deranged look. He thought that killing Hae-ju would be too easy. It wouldn't be satisfying. He wanted the police to see it with their own eyes, that the little angel they'd raised was just like him. Her hand was already stained with blood. Hae-ju looked up and suddenly burst out laughing. That smile made Ju Byum feel uneasy. He ran after her and saw Ju standing on the swing, gently swaying in the darkness, took off her scarf, then gently let it fall right at his feet. "Please help me give this to Uncle Alex." Ju Byum frowned, about to scold her for being crazy, but then he noticed Ju's hand moving slightly behind his back. Around her neck was a thin metal necklace. The end of the ring was attached to an iron chain. The other end of the chain is securely fastened to the highest iron hook on the swing frame. Ju's voice was soft but resolute. "All right then." After saying that, she let go of the swing chain. Her body, carried by the momentum, swung forcefully forward. The chain immediately tightened like a guitar string. An invisible force seemed to grip her, squeezing her so tightly there was no way out. Ji Byum watched her body hover in midair for a brief moment, then collapsed as if all life had left her. The swing continued to creak, emitting a chilling sound. Ji Byum was completely speechless. It turned out that the girl had sacrificed her own life to set the final trap. Jessica led the entire police team up the mountainside, and the sight that met their eyes was Ji Byum standing motionless beside Zu's body. At his feet lay her scarf, still stained with the girl's blood. His voice was hoarse, his teeth raspy like some kind of bell. His hand pointed straight at Ji Byum, who was trembling uncontrollably. All the police officers around him fell silent. Then an angry roar erupted, echoing throughout the mount, but the words choked in his throat. Zu's death drove the final nail into his coffin. Jessica looked at him. He never thought he wouldn't be able to protect the male team leader's daughter. After that, everyone wrapped a pink scarf around their neck. Once again, they brought Ji Byum before the court, and this time the court sentenced him to death, but Zu was no longer there. Jessica recalled the words she had once whispered to him: "Evil only triumphs when good people do nothing." It turned out that even back then, she had already made up her mind not to return. Jessica quietly walked into the room where Zu used to organize files and stood motionless, staring at the stacks of newspapers scattered across the floor. And the movie ends here. See you in the next video.